Live from the Xfinity Studios at WVON. You're listening to Chicago's legendary urban radio station, celebrating 50 years of informing, entertaining, and educating Chicago. And now, the nation on iHeartRadio. We are the talk of Chicago. 1690 WVON.
Cypher. Once again, it's on.
1690 WVON.
Welcome to the best part of your Sunday night. That's Sports Talk here on 1690 AM.
I know it's the best part of my Sunday night.
That means you are tuned in to the Sports Cypher. That means your radio dial, 1690 AM. And, of course, streaming worldwide at WVON.com and via the iHeartRadio.com app. I am Maya Khan.
I'm Gabe Salgado.
And we will be holding it down with you until 11 p.m. So 2 hours of solid, real sports talk. So if there's something you got to get off your chest.
Bears fans, we feel your pain. We want to hear from you. Call us 773-591-1690.
And if social media is more of your comfort zone, we have multiple ways you can interact with the show. You can tweet at the Sports Chica. That would be me. At the Sports Cypher. And by the way, I have resolved that. That is Facebook and Twitter, or
at Gabe Salgado 82.
So there's so many ways you can get involved in the conversation. So we're going to kick off the show recapping the Bears Week 5 loss to the Panthers.
Ay, Dios mío.
Yeah, say it one more time.
Ay, Dios mío.
31-24, but that's okay because we do have to move on to Week 6 where they will go down, actually 2 weeks on the road. You know, notice the Bears had to have a very specific pattern here. They have a home game and they hit the road for 2 weeks. They come home, they hit the road 2 weeks. These road matchups are not doing quite well for them. So they have to hit the road, and next week they are in Atlanta to meet up with, can we still call them Dirty Birds?
That's so 1990s.
I don't know. And they don't seem all that dirty, do they?
Not these days.
Not at all. So to help us kind of preview that matchup, we have Daryl Ledbetter, who is the Atlanta Falcons beat writer for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, who will kind of give us, I guess, a preview of what to anticipate, because Atlanta also lost today.
I was going to say, he probably had a bad game to watch today, too.
Yeah, so you are talking about two teams that are going to be desperate for a week, a win going into Week 6. So Daryl's going to help us kind of preview that matchup. And, of course, at the top of that 10 o'clock hour at 10:05, Gabe will give us the sports scores and updates for the day, which is always key. At 10:20, we're going to shift gears and talk some Bulls. Just in case the Bears are giving you the flux, guess what? Preseason starts for the Bulls tomorrow. So we have been involved in media day. We were at practices today, so we have some great stuff to share with you. So if you're our Bulls fan, make sure you are tuned in at least by 10:20 to hear about that. And then obviously about 10:40, we'll do hotlines and headlines and hot topics, different stuff that's going on. And there are some interesting stories kind of floating around, FYI.
When are there not interesting stories?
I don't know.
We always got something.
It seems like when we were going through the summer, there wasn't a whole lot to talk about. But now that we've gotten into, obviously football season, now basketball, there's some
hockey.
Some hockey. There's some interesting hockey players they're pretty like Boy Scouts. They fight on the ice, but they don't give you much dirt off the ice. They're not dirty off the ice. Not too much. Not too much.
Unless you were Bob Probert.
Well, there's always the exception to the rule. So that is how the show is going to unfold. So like I said, if you want to join the conversation, you can call into
773-591-1690.
Or don't be afraid to get social with this show. You can always tweet directly to me at the Sports Chica or to the show at the Sports Cypher. And FYI, that's Cypher with a Y.
And you can find me on Twitter at Gabe Salgado 82.
All right, so Gabe, we roll into Week 5 after quite the miserable loss against Green Bay last week, a home game. Now, we all know that most Bear fans are extremely sensitive when you talk about that Green Bay matchup. It's just a very sensitive topic. It's a long-standing rivalry in the NFL. So it's one of those games that actually a lot of people watch, even outside of Chicago.
You look at the score from today's game, and it seems like, okay, they only lost by a touchdown. But let me throw some disturbing numbers out for you.
Dun, dun, dun.
The Bears, just like against Green Bay last week, outgained their opponents. This week, they outgained Carolina 347-321. But here's where the problem lies. 4 turnovers and 10 penalties for 80 yards.
Here's probably the biggest issue I see. Now, mind you, initially when we saw the first portion of the Bears game, we were at Bulls practice.
Right.
And it's funny to watch a football game with people who watch basketball because the commentary is entirely different.
You'd swear these guys were Bears beat writers with the way they were talking.
I mean, but it just goes to show you how balanced they are across the board.
Right.
And maybe even a little unbiased to a degree. Because it wasn't like totally like just, bashing them because of coaching or players. Like the analysis was probably a bit different than you would get from a Bears beat writer. So I thought personally that was kind of enjoyable.
Yeah, I was trying so hard not to laugh in the media room over there at the Advocate Center.
Great.
Nice building, beautiful.
Very nice facility, right across the street from the United Center.
Very convenient.
Very convenient, nice facility. They dropped $23 million on that for a 60,000 square foot facility. It's all that, but we'll talk about that in the second hour. So the Bears now drop to 2-3, allowing Carolina to go up to 3-2. And here's the thing, Gabe, week to week, this is just a team that is extremely inconsistent. Now, could you imagine having the first half like they had against Green Bay against Carolina? This probably would have been an entirely different outcome. Instead, you see a team that's extremely inconsistent, doesn't seem prepared, and fumbled through the first half from everything that I saw.
And that's unfortunate because they wasted another 100-yard game from Matt Forte.
So finally, here's what's funny. The first 3 games, your receiving game, was very much on point, which you would expect because you know that Jeffrey, you know that Marshall, they have good hands, they're big receivers. You expect to get those kind of games from them. The biggest issue in the first 3 weeks is that the running game was non-existent from Matt Forte. So finally, you jumpstart the running game.
Wait, I take that back. 100 yards receiving for Matt Forte. My apologies. 61 yards rushing. So we're kind of back to where we were the first couple of weeks.
And it's weird because with saying that, though, you're almost seeing the uses of Matt Forte, how you saw him during the Lovie Smith era. We don't need Matt Forte for receiving yards. We need him for rushing yards. But that gets back to because there was good coverage in regards to Brandon Marshall, even though Alshon Jeffrey was open on many opportunities. And remember last week when we had on, Damian G. Bell from Sports Radio Network who talked about the whole matchup. He was like, Carolina's front four are very solid. And he even said their secondary will be a relatively decent matchup with Jeffrey and Marshall.
Carolina didn't blitz much today.
They didn't blitz much. But once again, so you get Max Slauson back into the lineup. You still have Roberto Garza, but I think that Brian De La Puente is actually doing a decent job at center. I'm not upset what he's doing. He's given decent coverage. Michael Ola is just not cutting it. And I didn't expect for Slauson to step into this game and to be 100% because he's been gone for, 3 weeks?
Yeah, and he's still a little slow off the ball.
Right, so he's rusty.
He's
got to get back to speed. But then you had so many spotty absences. So not only did you still have Ratliff wasn't out defensively, you had Bush. Now you've got Bushrod that was out as well.
That's gonna be huge
on the offensive side. So now the Bears are dealing with what seems to be a carousel of injuries. 1 week is somebody else. Granted, Jaron Allen came back, but he had the miraculous loss of 33 pounds last week.
He wasn't very effective.
Which, by the way, I need to know his ancient Chinese secret, because if you can drop 33 pounds in a week, I'll be sick of that.
You might want to put him at safety if that's the case. And lose that much weight.
I'll take it, because that's not a bad deal. But I didn't expect for him maybe to step back into this, 100%. Kind of a concern I have, with Jared Allen. I think he's intense. I think he's got good leadership, but now we're dealing with health issues. This can't be the spotty thing we're dealing with him throughout the season.
And let's not forget, he's on that 30-year-old range, so that probably plays a factor in it as well.
Yes, I do agree. So they spent good money to bring him here, and I don't think it's for a lack that he wants to play. I don't think that he doesn't try to build the intensity. I think it may purely turn into a health-related issue, how many downs he's on the field.
Here's the good thing about the injuries this year compared to last year. Last year, all the injuries were on the defensive side of the ball.
Yes.
And you had no depth.
Yes.
This year, it's a little more balanced on both sides of the ball. But the good thing is you plug those holes. You have guys that could do that. They're not doing it on a consistent basis, but at least it's not as devastating as it was last year.
And here's the thing about, to me, for this NFL season as it rolls out, I don't care what game you look at, you almost can't look at the stats and say, hey, the stats indicate that the right team won. Because when you look at first downs, okay, Carolina had 22 to the Bears 16. But total yards, the Bears had 347 to Carolina having 321.
But Carolina had 2 more plays than the Bears, 64 to 62. They had more first downs, 22 to 17. Third down efficiency was both even, really. The Bears 5 of 13, Carolina 5 of 12. So, yeah, this is a lot of – statistically, it's mixed up. You can't base it on stats alone.
Turnover-wise, The Bears had 4 turnovers to Carolina 33. To 3. 33. They should have lost the game. But the bottom line is you're not talking about a team that was extremely efficient in really protecting the ball on either team.
Bears won time of possession again this week, 32 minutes to Carolina's 27.
So here's another game where you look at the statistics that on a good Sunday, those kind of numbers, taking out the turnovers, which now Jay Cutler is now turning, by the way, into the quarterback that people believe that he is. That first 3 weeks into the season, remember I talked about this last week. If you would have looked at the numbers for Jay Cutler versus Aaron Rodgers going into that matchup against Green Bay, you wouldn't have known what quarterback was which quarterback. Seriously, the numbers were just that similar. So that was a positive. You felt, so the Bears they're not getting big wins necessarily. But you felt like had Cutler taken the one thing off his repertoire, which was a bad thing, was the amount of turnovers that he had last season and the season before. But now we're getting into week 5, and now we have a return of the turnovers again. And that's an issue because against good teams, they will take turnovers and take you out to pasture. They will. You saw that last week with Green Bay. Carolina just managed to monopolize on it. To me, there was in that possession where there was Here's a mental thing to me, and this wasn't even an offensive thing, where you get a return for Carolina. The return man from Carolina doesn't wave fair catch. The ball actually hits the Bears player in the back, bounces off, and it's kind of out there rolling around. But the Carolina player had the wherewithal to pick it up and just run with it, and ran it back for a touchdown.
Everybody thought the play was dead.
But to me, good defensive players, even on special teams, this is where I keep telling people, special teams will be the one area with the Bears that you will miss the change. Their special teams coordinator is now with the Kansas City Chiefs.
And this goes back to the colorful commentary we talked about at the Advocate Center. Now, that particular play, we can't repeat some of what was said, but just to give you an idea of how frustrating it is. Well, check this out. Here's something that I found on ChiCitySports.com, good website. I write for them from time to time.
Are you being biased?
Trying not to be.
Okay.
But they managed to grab hold of some tweets that Lamar Houston put out after the game, responding to fans, negative fans. He says, now this is on his Twitter page, "Thank you to all the people who don't play the game with comments. So glad you could analyze the game without a clue. Where are my real fans? The ones who don't waver during the storms, the tough ones. Those are the ones we need. The rest of you can eat dirt. Your team is 2-3 and you're upset? It's 11 games left and you're mad? If you're a true believer, you would let the doubt that enters your heart to take, you would not let the doubt, wait, hold on. If you're a true believer, you would let the doubt that enters your heart to take over no matter what the situation is what he said on Twitter. The series of 5 tweets, his last tweet, "Thank you for keeping me motivated. Please give more hate. Pour it out."
See, to me, that's him venting. That's him venting, being angry and being very upset about the way Chicago fans are responding to where they are record-wise. I mean, understand, the NFC North is quite a tough division because it tends to be a 3-team race. You're often looking at the Bears, Detroit, and Green Bay.
Well, that's probably directed at him, too. He only had 2 tackles on the day. And, he hasn't really put up much pressure. I mean, there's the argument that he's too big to play defensive end. And, they haven't slid him inside the tackle much. A lot of people say he's more of a defensive tackle than he is a defensive end. I kind of understand where people are coming from because he's been ineffective as well. So really, it just hasn't been much of a pass rush. The only sacks today came from Willie Young and Stephen Paya.
And that was Stephen Paya's, that was big. That was a much needed series. He had a sack. It came at a very important time of the game. Here's the thing. I keep saying this, and I know it's hard when you're just a fan and you're trying not to be biased. Don't expect for the defense that you see this year to have monumentous success because it's not going to happen. Unlike last year where the offensive line gelled and we saw something miraculous happen, it's different with defenses because you do have a lot of rookies and young players out there. You had some retooling of a line. So I don't know if they're as cohesive because isn't this interesting in the past 2 weeks that the dynamics that you got from the likes of Kyle Fuller and from Willie Young, it seems like it's been absent the last 2 weeks. Now, I don't know if that's a coaching standpoint. I don't know if it's just what they're seeing in regards to receivers. But to me, there was nothing about, look, let me just say this. I like Greg Olsen, G-Reg. G-Reg. I love that.
I'll tell you, there's probably some upset Bears fans that are thinking we probably shouldn't have let him go.
Okay, but somebody said that. And I said,
so,
I Actually, when Greg Olsen departed from the Bears, I thought that was a little premature personally. I didn't think he was a bad tight end. But remember, he was under the Martz system, and all Mike Martz wanted from his tight ends were blocking tight ends. And that wasn't a strength for Greg Olsen.
No, he's a pass catching.
Exit, and he went to Carolina and actually has had good success there.
He goes to an offense that suits him well.
Yes, and has had good success. So was that probably a negative? Yes, but that's way back then. We can't change the coaching dynamics and what they thought they were trying to do schematically to help out at that time, which was an offense that was really willing to find good protection for the quarterback. I mean, remember that was a season, where a season of 52 sacks is absolutely ridiculous. So at that point, they were pulling everything out the Rabbits had to try to get Jay Cutler protection. So was Greg Olsen's exit from the Bears probably premature? Yes, I do believe it was. But it is what it is, and I do believe you have a solid tight end in Martellus Bennett. So I'm like, don't cry for me, Argentina. Don't do it. Martellus Bennett is that good. But you have to use him the right way. And as far as I'm concerned, in regards to the talent we have on offense, I'm not seeing it from Aaron Kromer. I'm not seeing it from Mark Trestman that they're using their offensive talent appropriately. What's your thoughts? 773-591-1690. I know you've got something you want to get off your chest. This is Sports Cypher. I am Maya Kai.
I'm Gabe Salgado.
We're going to take a quick break. I see you, Brian. We'll get you on the line when we come back. Stay tuned.
We'll return after these messages.
Well, first of all, I do want to congratulate Ron and the Panthers for their win. They hung in there and they played all 4 quarters, played every minute of it, and they won the game and deserved to win it. From our standpoint, number one, I've got to take accountability for our failure to get it done in the second half. We didn't get it done in all 3 phases, and that starts with me. We didn't have any significant drives in the second half. We got 3 points. We got caught on 3rd down and 2. We got caught down on 3rd down and 3 one time, and took a tackle for a loss on a sweep and in the fringe area. We made some stops defensively to put ourselves in position, and we didn't get it done. We didn't score enough points to win. And
there's many opportunities for us to close this out offense.
That was Mark Trestman speaking to the media after their loss to Carolina, very, very graciously and kindly saying that ultimately, I guess, was he saying that Carolina just played a better game?
It's only a matter of time before fans get sick of that.
Yeah. It's that response that doesn't work for people. It's just what you don't want to hear Trestman or anybody else say is, I can only take 1, maybe 2 games of we outplayed ourselves, so hence we lost the game. So you felt that way in the season opener against the Bills. That was a loss. They very easily could have won that game. This game against Carolina was very sloppy, and this team didn't look very prepared. Considering they were coming off a substantial loss against Green Bay the week before, which is a huge divisional matchup, which is the very reason when they play like that, they missed the playoffs last year, going 10-6, not making the playoffs because your division record was so poor. So you think they go into Carolina because they're on the road again for 2 weeks. They're in Carolina. Next week they go out to Atlanta for the Falcons. And the thing is this. They didn't seem very prepared this week. What I'm not going to accept is there was a fair share of injuries on board because there seems to be enough depth there that they should be able to manage injuries much better than how they're playing.
It's another head scratcher. Definitely is. I mean, and just like you said, you can't use the injuries as an excuse no more. I mean, really, I know it's only week 5, but we've all been let down so far. During the preseason and throughout training camp, we were built up to believe that this was going to be the year the Bears get back to glory, get back to prominence, and
a good offense.
Yeah.
You felt finally there was offensive talent. You felt finally you had offensive line that could give Jay Cutler adequate protection.
And yet he's regressed so terribly.
And the thing is, defensively, we know there were issues last year, but you felt like
we thought that they were going to improve.
They plugged some holes defensively.
I mean, we weren't going to go back to the Brian Urlacher glory days, but we figured
it's a process,
they'd be much better.
Though. It's a process. And here we are at week 5, scratching our heads. Now, mind you, I picked them to go 11-5. They only have 2 more losses they can possibly give up to the rest of their schedule. This was one of those games that was supposed to be manageable. And here's the thing. I'm not going to back off the assessment that this was a team that should have been manageable because there were plays where they contained Cam Newton beautifully. But the lack of consistency is my big issue with this. What's your thoughts? 773-591-1690. You are tuned in to the best sports talk radio on your AM dial, 1690, maybe on your radio dial, period, because nobody will probably be as honest as we are. So if you got thoughts, call in. If social media is more your thing, you can always get social with the show at the Sports Chica, at the Sports Cypher. That's Cypher with a Y.
And at Gabe Salgado 82.
All right, looks like the Bear fans have something they like to say. Let's go ahead and take a call from Brian from the South Side. Brian, what's your thoughts about this Bears loss tonight?
Yes, good evening, guys. I think this is your second year of doing this football talk on Sunday, if I'm not mistaken.
No, it's well beyond my second year, but go on.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm wrong on that. I called you last year, and we kind of went toe-to-toe about Jay Cutler. You was mentioning that he didn't have an adequate offensive line. It was like his fifth year last year. Well, this is his sixth. The problem with Jay Cutler, the problem why we lost that game, it was quarterback play in crunch time. Very good when it counted. Cam Newton made plays, Jay Cutler don't. For years, for the last couple of years, we've been making excuses for Jay Cutler. They don't sell the right kind of hot dogs. The line is not blocking. The defenses are not good. The bottom line is in crunch time and then times we're pressing the game on the line, he panics and he throws interceptions. As far as Matt Forte is concerned, I don't think he's the kind of back you get a ball to 25, 30 times a game because he bounces around and he's quick when he hit a hole. But after he takes a couple of hits, he slows down and he lets the ball go.
All right, Brian.
Hello?
Brian, I'm not going to disagree with that.
He makes a good argument.
I agree with you. I agree with you with the Matt Forte thing. He's not that back that can take that many touches because one, he's not an A or B gap runner. He has to get out in the flat to really have a good amount of success. So I agree with you totally about Matt Forte.
Not just that, the Bears' offense isn't engineered that way.
It's not at all. It's not. So the conversation about Matt Forte is entirely valid. The Jay Cutler conversation is one that, for me, is in the air. And I'm going to tell you why, Brian. And thank you for the call. And I'm sure I'm going to get a whole list of people who are going to disagree with me on this. 773-591-1690. Here's the issue I have with Jay Cutler. It isn't that he doesn't have the arm. Here's the thing that baffles me about Jay Cutler. He has the arm. He can put the ball down the field in a way that McCown never could. McCown was a game manager, which makes a lot of people feel safe. There's a reason why, for instance, Matthew Stafford has a lot of interceptions, because he has the mindset that I can put the ball up for Calvin, and Calvin is going to go get it. Well, sometimes that works, and sometimes it doesn't. And that can come back to bite you as a quarterback. Now, here's the thing I want to see happen with Jay Cutler. I need for you to give him the ability to do audibles. So if a play unfolds and it's not working, please don't run that play, because it usually results in either nothing or an interception is the way it feels. Now, here's something I have said statistically that needs to change in football. I feel that if a quarterback delivers a pass and it bounces off a receiver, I don't personally feel you should be charged with an interception because you did connect with your receiver. But as it stands statistically, that goes against the quarterback. Now, when you're watching the game, you can't tell me you didn't see a couple passes where clearly the receiver should have pulled that ball and it didn't happen. So I'm not going to blame every single interception on Jay Cutler, but clearly there are times where he drops the ball in the wrong place. But by the way, I've seen that from Tom Brady. I've seen that from Drew Brees. I've seen that from every quality quarterback in the NFL. With great quarterbacks, and by the way, Jay Cutler is not a great quarterback, there comes a fair amount of risk when you believe you have talent that go and get the ball. Now, here's what this makes me question. Are we now back to this conversation about having the right offensive people in place? The one thing I felt would happen under Trestman's tutelage is that he would make Jay Cutler a better quarterback. Going into the first 2 weeks of the season, it actually looked that way. You had fewer interceptions. I don't want to say he felt safe, but you had fewer interceptions and you had more completed plays. Now, granted, there wasn't a good run-pass balance, but his interceptions were down. He has more interceptions in the last two games than he's had in the first three. So now that means there's something wrong with this big picture, and we need to figure out what's wrong. I'm not going to put it all on him, but I will say this. He needs to make better choices.
It's like 2009, 2010 all over again, and I want to go ahead and say that it sucks.
Well, heck yeah, we're only, 5 games into the season?
Exactly. I mean, you take a look at where he was last year on the same time, completely different quarterback. And it's just to watch the regression as opposed to progression. It's really just
it
hurts.
And I will say this, and DJ, Darius, Marvin, I see you lined up. We're getting to your calls. I will say this, that they bring on Aaron Cromer, who is a coordinator that Jay Cutler knows. I'm expecting better results from him because surrounded around him are people that are offensive-minded. Now, coming into this season, we couldn't say that. He didn't have an offensive-minded coach in Lovie Smith. He didn't have the right coordinators, but he has all the tools in his toolbox to do better. And if this turns into a season that's a bust, well, here's what's scary. And I'll say this. I have no problem cutting anybody loose. I will break up with you over text in a heartbeat. Seriously. But let me just say this. If this turns into a bust, you do realize the Bears have overextended themselves in the contract they've given to Jay Cutler. I had an issue with that. Is it something crazy like 7 years?
7 years, 100 and something million.
And there's like...
And if they were to cut him outright, they're going to have to give him at least half of that.
Yes.
They guaranteed
I was like, don't get me wrong.
$54 million.
I'll give Jay the benefit of the doubt, but I'm not giving you 7 years of the doubt. That was a contract that made no sense to me. I'm going to say this, and then DJ, I'm going to you. Here's the bottom line. That before you decide you want to break up with Jay Cutler, I would ask you this. Who's your side chick if you're breaking up with Jay Cutler? Just look around the league, FYI, and you tell me who's your side chick? Because I hate to be the bearer of bad news, Gabe. There's not a lot of good quarterbacks out there in a backup capacity. We got lucky last year with McCown, and FYI, it ain't going so good in Tampa Bay. There ain't no buccaneering down there right now.
That was clearly an example of Mark Trestman's leadership in teaching.
But
he does not have that now. And
McCowan said,
and if you think about it, his performances in Tampa are probably worse than he's been anywhere else in his career. And statistically, throughout his career, he's not been a great quarterback.
McCowan
he just had the one
himself,
good year with the Bears, and that was it.
He said it was the system that allowed him to thrive. Mind you, he was a little bit above a game manager. He wasn't a risk taker, which made all of his possessions so much safer because he didn't have the arm that Cutler has. So hence, he never tried to overextend himself.
And the sad part, now
I liked him though.
Now I honestly, when Lovie Smith said that Jeff Tedford was going to be his offensive coordinator, I figured that's not a bad move. Jeff Tedford, he was a successful college coach, but overall, he's a really good offensive X's and O's guy. I figured, okay, right. McCown could probably hold his own with Jeff Tedford. Right. That just hasn't happened. I'm disappointed for him and for everybody involved because I didn't think they were going to win the Super Bowl, but I thought they were going to be a lot better than they were last year.
I'm just concerned because at week 5, we're taking a regression. In the first 3 weeks, it was consistent. It wasn't mind-blowing, but it was consistent. And now we're taking 2 steps back, and I have an issue with that. And I have no problem putting anybody on blast. 773-591-1690. Get your thoughts in. Or if social media is more of your comfort zone, at the Sports Chica, at the Sports Cypher, and that's with a Y.
At Gabe Salgado 82.
All right, DJ, you are on deck. What's your thoughts in regards to this Bears loss tonight?
Hey, we talked earlier down at down at Norman's Bistro earlier.
Yes, we did.
Hey, how are you? Hey, we just have a problem with adapting to what the other teams are doing to us. It's called shift on the fly. It's called coaching. It's called playing the game. If they're running a stunt and your offensive linemen were, when you practice for it during the week in game prep, and it was going this way, but now they're running it from the left side as opposed to the right side, you got to adapt to that. Listen, that's what this game, that's why you say, I was just listening to the guy talk about X's and O's, and we're not good at X's and O's right now. We're poor at X's and O's right now. We are not shifting on the fly. We are not adapting to what's going on, what the other teams are doing to us, and you got Luke Kuechly in the middle playing center field like he was Urlacher or Singletary, and you didn't move him. You didn't move him off his spot. It's like they were talking about last week, getting Aaron Rodgers off his spot. Well, you got to do that to a middle linebacker. You got to run 4K, run more screens, do more things to get him on the outside, so that the middle linebacker isn't stuck in the middle of the field. And he was every time Forte would run that little safety valve, he's lighting them up, and that's bad coaching. That's bad game plan. That's something that's something.
Oops! Somebody opened the door. Thank you, DJ. I agree. Poor adjustments, and even though coming into this game, there was a whole lot of hype about Luke Kuechly. There was a whole lot of hype. He's a quality player. So here's the thing. You game plan when you know you have a player of that capacity. Remember last week, if you listen to the show, Damian G. Bell, who was on for Sports Network.
Sportsline Radio Network.
He said that Carolina's front four is solid. He did. He's like, that might be the biggest issue you have. He's like, in the secondary does a good job complementing. They're not going to blow you away, but they're solid.
I honestly thought they weren't going to be as good without Greg Hardy, but that hasn't been the case at all.
Not at all.
They've been so effective that Kuechly's just able to roll from sideline to sideline and make plays.
Kuechly coming into this was a large part of what you had to game plan for. And I agree, DJ. Here's another week where you feel like the adjustments weren't made accordingly. We saw last week when the Bears were in the mix with Green Bay going into halftime, even though they should have not at least have gone into halftime without 3 points minimum.
Yeah, they should have kicked that
But
field
that's
goal.
another story. But you saw coming out of halftime, Dom Capers, who I personally feel is a defensive genius, I don't care what anybody says, made the adjustments for the Bears. Mel Tucker, not so much. Mel Tucker right now is on the hot seat. And let me tell you something else. Write this down. Maya said this. The exit of Dave Topp going down to Kansas City to be their special teams coach.
Back to bite 'em.
We lost we would have great field position when he was managing our special teams. I said this a couple weeks ago. We will miss him. Don't take what special teams have done for the last couple years for granted.
It's not.
Deacon Millis is just not making the cut.
And it's not as much as fans want to blame not having Devin Hester. It's more than just him.
It's more than just that.
It was Dave Toub and his scheme.
Dave Toub was on top of his stuff, and now he's in Kansas City giving them what he was giving us. Take a call from Darius calling from Calumet City. Darius, your thought in regards to this loss today for the Bears?
Yeah, I just like to say, Mel Tucker, I don't know if he has a clue in terms of what he's trying to do, because I'm looking at
Darius, are you on speakerphone?
Yeah, I'm on my phone.
Oh, no. Are you on speakerphone?
Yes, I am.
You got to take it off speakerphone because you sound like you're miles away to us.
Hello?
There you go. Now we can hear you. Now go ahead. What did you say?
Saying the deep backs, they bailed out on any pass play. I mean, it's like they're not needed anybody. That's why Aaron Rodgers was salivating. When they played the Packers last week, he couldn't. I mean, it's like from the get-go. He came out firing, and they was like just ripping the deep backs. I mean, the defensive back scheme, whatever plan they had put in effect, if you want to call it a plan, they just ripped them to shreds. And Carolina, pretty much when it was just what they need to make, they did the same thing. And I'm looking at Detroit. I mean, Detroit laid the blueprint in terms of what the Bears should have did to shore up their defense. And from the look of things, they learned no lessons whatsoever. They just basically just coolers out there. And in regards to the Bears quarterback, I mean, I don't think he can even read defenses. I mean, he looks like a dead headlight. I mean, he's like panic, throwing in the triple coverage. I mean, it just seems to me like that was a total waste of money in terms of giving him that long-term contract when he didn't deserve it. He didn't prove that he was worthy of it, and it's going to come back to bite him in the long run, I think.
Darius, you might have a point on that. I'm willing to give Jay Cutler a chance. I'm just not willing to give him 7 years to prove to me that he's that good. Because at that point, you are obsolete and you are turning over your team offensive and defensively, but yet your quarterback's still there. He's not giving you Tom Brady, Drew Brees, or any of those kind of numbers. So that made no sense to me. So I do agree with you on that. They did do a lot of things right. They did a lot of things right in the first 3 games, and they failed to continue that moving into these last 2 weeks. And we have to figure out why that is. Sports Cypher, Maya Kai on with Gabe Salgado. Stay tuned. We'll keep talking Bears. Matter of fact, we're going to start talking and previewing Week 6 as the Bears stay on the road and go down to Atlanta to face up the Falcons. 2 teams that are going to be desperate for a win in Week 6. Stay tuned, callers. I see you. We'll get to you.
Back to the best sports show on the radio, the Sports Cypher.
Welcome back to the Sports Cypher. Gabe Salgado, Maya Kai here with you. And we're taking your calls, 773-591-1690. We're talking about the Bears and just how things don't look too good at Hal's Hall these days with the inconsistency and the injuries, and the Bears just not looking good on either side of the ball. I mean, really, it's just been a tough last couple of weeks, what happened with Green Bay. And, the Bears only lost by 7 to Carolina today, but really, the score doesn't tell the whole story. It was just another bad game, 4 turnovers, 10 penalties. Just a lot of bad things going on with the Bears today. And we're taking your calls, and we're here for you, Bears fans. We want to hear your frustration. We want to hear what bothers you about this team. 773-591-1690. You could also find us on social media at The Sports Cypher. at The Sports Chica. You can find me at Gabe Salgado182. You can also find us on Facebook at the Sports Cypher as well on Facebook. Look that up. And
looks like we have Bears fans. They got something to get off their chest, Gabe. Let's take a call from Marvin on the West Side. Marvin, what's your thoughts about the Bears' loss today against the Panthers?
Let me tell you, I'm going all the way back to last season. Cutler had a backup. All these years when Cutler was the main quarterback, every time he got hurt, he had nobody to back him up. Lovie Smith was in there. He couldn't find a good quarterback to back him up except that one guy named Caleb Payne in that Green Bay game, which was good. But let me say this. Last year, when McCown was on a roll, he was injured. Cutler was injured. He had won 2 games. Cutler couldn't play. He had a game against Detroit. Cutler was supposed to have been the main quarterback. We got to talking, me and some people got to talking. We think that Cutler was crying because he couldn't start. So what happens? He took, Trestman took Cutler out, McCown out and put Cutler in. Cutler made the worst mistakes in his game, and Detroit, they could have beaten Detroit because Detroit had them all. Detroit was beating them all upside their heads. When he finally took Cutler out because his injury flared up, then they put McCown in there, then they scored a touchdown. They could have started McCown the whole game. Some of those losses was.
Oops.
Did we lose our connection? I think we did.
Happened, but he's not there. But hey, I'm not even going to regress to last year because when it's all said and done, when it's truly all said and done, McCown's gone. This is Cutler's team. Now, I will say this, and this seems to be something that happens week to week. People are not on board with him. They're not quite feeling it. They feel like he's inconsistent. It's the turnovers. It's the interceptions
It's when he gets sacked. Even though you can't blame that on him,
right?
They still look at it. He could throw the ball away. He could run.
Because you have a lot of people who are very in tune with what they feel is having an athletic quarterback, one that can break out the pocket, that can scramble, get extra yards,
like Cam Newton.
But remember, what did I just say at the break, Gabe? That when you look at Jay Cutler's numbers, he was 28 for 36, 289 yards, 2 touchdowns. He rushed for 3, 22 yards, 1 touchdown. If you take away the 2 interceptions, that doesn't look like a bad quarterback. It's when you put the 2 interceptions in there that you have a problem.
Let's not forget he also lost a fumble.
Yeah. So, overall it's the fumbles, it's the interceptions that makes Jay Cutler hard for a lot of people to swallow when it's all said and done. Well, with that being said, the Bears take a loss to Carolina, which a lot of people aren't happy with, fair, going into week 5. But at the same time, they're still on the road next week. They go to Atlanta to face up against the Falcons, who themselves took quite a loss from a team. I'm not sure what loss is worse, losing to the Panthers or losing to the Giants. The Atlanta Falcons lose 30-20 to the Giants. So you going into week 6, you got 2 teams who are going to be very desperate for a win. And to help us break down this matchup, we have Daryl Ledbetter, who is the Atlanta Falcons beat writer for the AJC, which is the Atlanta Journal-Constitution for us people in Chicago who don't know that. How you doing tonight, Daryl?
Hey, Maya, I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, I need for somebody to tell me something that's going to make me feel good about going into week 6. So the Falcons probably have just as big of a loss as the Bears do. So understand the Bears coming into Atlanta next week. You've got 2 teams that really need to get a win. So tell me a bit about the Falcons. We do know you got Devin Hester, which a lot of people in Chicago feel very angry about his exit from Chicago. But what else is going on there?
Well, you have kind of a schizophrenic team, one that plays very well at home in the Georgia Dome, having beaten the Saints in Tampa Bay. But when they get outside of the Georgia Dome, they've had problems. They've lost in Cincinnati, outdoors in Minnesota, and then outdoors again here today in New York. So it's not a team that travels well. It has a revamped offensive line and a defense that is leaky somewhat. So the Bears, will be able to probably move the ball when they come to Atlanta.
But okay, Matt Ryan is a lot like Jay Cutler. There's a mixed love affair with feeling he's a quality quarterback. But if you look at his numbers against the Giants today, he went 29 for 45, 316 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. So obviously, I mean, with at least the 1 touchdown part, that's not a great number to have. But he put up 316 yards. So let's first look at the Falcons offensively. Where is Matt Ryan now? I mean, is he that quarterback that people feel like is going to take the Falcons, to a true Super Bowl, or is he pretty much have that same kind of bad reputation that Jay Cutler has?
No, I think his reputation is much stellar than Jay Cutler. He has been to the playoffs consistently. He has been to the NFC Championship game. He has gone into the playoffs with the number 1 seed twice. His deal is, hey, they surround him with talent, and they block it up. He's going to win it for you. When his offensive line is solid and he's clean, he knows where the ball's supposed to go, and he can deliver that, certainly inside the dome. So I don't think that they're in the same ilk because, the winning seasons, consecutive winning seasons he's put up here since he's been here, and his, playoff record's not great, but he at least gets them to the playoffs on a consistent basis.
Let's talk about Atlanta in 3 phases. Let's talk about the running game. So Steven Jackson comes down to Atlanta from St. Louis. Was that a year ago he came down there? How has the running game progressed with him in the mix?
It hasn't progressed at all, Maya. He was hurt most of last year. He's averaging a little under 3 yards a carry this year. They were done better with keeping Michael Turner, but they wanted to run him off because Steven Jackson could catch the ball a little bit better out of the backfield. But he's a guy clearly at the end of the line here, and they're trying to squeeze as much out of him as they can.
What do you think has been the biggest problem for the Falcons over the last 2 weeks?
Well, the defense has been leaky. They gave up 558 yards up in Minnesota. And then today against the Giants, the offense knows they have to outscore the Giants and get into a shootout with them, and they stall inside the 5-yard line twice. They had to settle for 2 20-yard field goals. But they still had a 10-point lead with 17 minutes to go in the game, a little bit over 5 in the third quarter. And, of course, the defense, wasn't going to hold up. Everybody knew that. And so they were missing those touchdowns. So today it was the red zone offense and going 2 of 13 on third downs. And last week it was just the defense not bothering to show up in Minnesota. So you never know which team you're going to get now in this new NFL where, it's very hard to build a full dynamic team.
We're talking with Daryl Ledbetter, who is the Atlanta Falcons beat writer for the AJC, which is the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, previewing Week 6 as the Bears will stay on the road and head to Atlanta to face the Falcons. You know what's kind of crazy, Daryl, is when I look at the receiving corps, when I see the likes of Julio Jones, when I see Roddy White, and obviously you guys even get Devin Hester in the mix. I see that you have the same type of talent offensively the Bears do. What is keeping, I guess, the Falcons from having that breakout and kind of controlling their division, because they also are 2-3?
Well, yeah, this year, it looked like they were on their way when they put that 56 up on Tampa Bay, and when they came back and beat the Saints in a shootout. But since then, they've lost 3 offensive linemen. They have guys in there that were on the practice squad. And, when Matt Ryan's pocket isn't firm, he looks like a regular old guy. So injuries are an issue again. That was the problem, part of the problem last year, and a young and inconsistent defense. So if they can pull it all together, they're a tough load to handle. But, we'll just have to see as they move forward if these reserves they have this year can carry on, and if this defense with 6 new starters starts to, play as a unit. They haven't been able to do that yet.
So it's safe to say going into this Week 6 that if the Bears can get a good amount of pressure on obviously on Matt Ryan, because there is definitely some holes in that offensive line, that might be the starting point of some success for the defense, being able to maybe even do some more blitzing than we probably have seen from them all season, because it seems like you just said their biggest Achilles heel right now is giving Matt Ryan the protection that he needs on that offensive line. How do you think that the Falcons match up with the Bears defensively? We all know the Bears have got big receivers, and talking about Marshall, and we've got obviously Alshon Jeffrey. Who matches up with them, and do you think they can contain the large wide receivers that the Bears have?
Well, I don't think they can, and they've had trouble with Forte in the past. He had 158 total yards when they opened the season up in Chicago in 2011, and most of those guys are gone from that defense. But you had 5 sacks and 11 quarterback hits that day, so they can't really cover Alshon and Brandon Marshall with the 2 young cornerbacks, and Eli went after Robert Alford today. So they'd have to keep a safety over the top with those guys. And then without a pass rush, those guys are, they don't hold up in 6 seconds of coverage. So the Bears' weapons match up well against the Falcons coming into Atlanta, especially on the dome, in the dome and on the faster track.
Now, Daryl, here's another question I have for you. When the Bears tried to make Devin Hester an offensive player, it failed miserably. What was it that the Falcons were able to do to bring that talent out of him and make him so effective?
Well, I think it was on Devin. He was more determined to show that Chicago with. So he came in here with the attitude, and this is from Coach Smith from Cutter, so I'm not, making it up. The coaches said he came in here determined to prove the Bears wrong, that he could play on offense. And I don't know if that was because he loved Coach Lovey so much, and Mark Trestman kind of pushed him aside a little bit. But he came in here determined to learn the playbook, not just to be a 6 or 7 package play guy. And they needed somebody to help them when Tony Gonzalez retired. They wanted to run 3 and 4 wide receiver sets and present problems to defenses. And they did that early on, but, Hester hasn't been able to sustain it, and Harry Douglas has since gotten hurt too. So, I think the factor was in Devin coming here and fitting into the offense.
So, I guess he's out to – I'm sure with Chicago coming to town, he's going to feel like there's something that he wants to prove. I'll be honest, Daryl, I was never convinced that Devin Hester was really good in that receiving role. I feel he was extremely dynamic when he was part of special teams. He was a kick returner. That seems like that where his mojo was. And when he was taken out of that, it seemed to me that's when his game began to decline. Now, I think it's great because let's just put it this way. When he left Chicago, he was like, when they actually let Lovie Smith go, it was more of Devin who was like, I might retire. Like, he took that really personally. So his exit was partially, I feel like he didn't want to be part of what the Bears were doing here, but I'm happy to see that he landed in Atlanta and has had great success. And as I said to you, when I reached out to you, we have lots of people coming down from Chicago, and there's quite a bit of Chicago transplant in Atlanta. So I expect that in the Dome, you're going to see a whole lot of Bears fans.
Yeah, that was the case a few years back when the Bears looked like they had the Falcons beat, but Matt Ryan came back and won the game in 11 seconds. And I know, at least from my Twitter feed, there are a lot of Chicago Falcon Bear, fans in the Chicagoland area. So yeah, that should be quite a festive day, and quite a interesting game for 2 teams fighting for their lives early here in the season.
All right, Daryl, thank you for checking in the show. I appreciate it. I will definitely reach out to you via Twitter after that game next week. Have a good one.
All right, thanks for having me. You all take care.
You too. That's Daryl Ledbetter, who is the Atlanta Falcons beat writer for the AJC, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, previewing Week 6, 2 teams that are 2-3 that need to walk away with a win. Huge. Maybe being in the Dome, some warm weather in the South, maybe that's just what the Bears need to get back on track. And from what Daryl says, it seems like it should be a matchup that should be manageable. But you know what? I'm going to stop saying that week to week because I said that last week about Carolina. Either way, we're going to take an NBC news break. When we come back, Gabe will give us sports scores and updates, and then we're going to shift gears and talk some Bulls. Stay tuned. Sports Cypher, Maya, Gabe. We'll be right back.
It's 10:05, and I'm Gabe Salgado, and it's time for your sports update. Starting with the Bears, and in case you haven't heard by now, the Bears lost at Carolina today 31-24. Jay Cutler threw 2 interceptions, and the Bears committed 4 turnovers and 10 penalties on the day. Ouch. They could catch a break next week, however, when they travel to Atlanta to take on the Falcons next week, as they lost to the New York Giants today by the score of 30-20, so the Bears could have some momentum there. The Bears are now tied with the Minnesota Vikings at the bottom of the NFC North at 2-3, while the Packers and Lions are tied on top at 3-2. Detroit lost to Buffalo 17-14 this afternoon, while Green Bay demolished Minnesota 42-10 on Thursday night. The Cubs and White Sox might be in hibernation, but they're still playing baseball today. The Baltimore Orioles have advanced to the American League Championship Series by defeating the Detroit Tigers 2-1 and sweeping that AL Division Series 3-0. And Baltimore awaits the winner of the Kansas City Los Angeles Angels series. And right now, Kansas City is up 8-3, and they have a 2-0 lead. So if they win, they will meet Baltimore in the American League Championship Series. The National League Division Series games resume tomorrow night. Yesterday's college football action saw Northwestern win their second straight game by upsetting Wisconsin 20-14. Illinois lost their second straight by falling to Purdue 38-27. Notre Dame is still among the unbeatens after getting by Stanford 17-14. And Northern Illinois also won 17-14, taking down Kent State after coming off their bye week. And some breaking NBA news here. The Street and Smith Sports Business Journal is reporting that tomorrow the NBA is expected to announce a massive, their words, TV deal with ESPN and Turner, aka TNT, and this could be huge for the league, as it's been said for months now that this could give an increase in next year's salary cap, and the Bulls are just among the many teams that have a vested interest in an increased salary cap, so we'll have to keep an eye on that as that announcement will come tomorrow. I'm Gabe Salgado, and that is your scoreboard update.
Take every negative aspect of my life and try to make it a positive. To me, it was probably a good reason why I catch a rhythm with that ball. I tried every night to go out there and shoot it, but it just didn't go down. Just part of basketball. And I get to come here, stay with a solid team. I'll be able to shoot 20, 25 shots a night if I choose to. So within them 20 shots, I think I should be able to find a little rhythm. So I'm not worried about that.
Hey, Derek, right down the middle. Question was asked you a year ago, before the second injury. Can you understand why there are a lot of Bulls fans? They don't doubt your confidence. They don't doubt your resolve and focus. Just doubt whether or not you can stay in one piece.
Oh, yeah. With these two type of injuries, of course, that question and that's just going to come up. I'm not worried about that. I don't care about when people ask me the question. I know that it's always going to be there. I'm always going to have to answer this question for the rest of my career, so I'm not worried about that. So, but for the Bulls fans, I can sit here and say a million times that I'll be fine, but I think the only way to answer all the critics and everyone asking about me is to actually be on the court and actually playing.
With that being said, where's your confidence level right now, the trust in your knee, and especially this time compared to last year as well? I know they're different injuries.
My confidence in my body, period, is very high. I know all the work that I put into the off season and getting back into the shape that I'm in right now, so I'm not worried about that. I haven't been worried about it. The question didn't come up the entire time I was in camp in Vegas. It didn't come up none while I was overseas, so I never got wind of it like that. I never really thought about it or went deep into it. So this is a new journey for me, and just trying to take it all in.
Once again, it's on
1690 WVON.
Welcome back to the Sports Cypher. As we shift gears, I want to say, got the let out as we talked. The Bears just absolutely, I don't know, can I say it's a ridiculous loss, Gabe? Can I say that?
I can come up with a few other words, too.
It's just...
Now, not all of them are appropriate for radio, but just get you the feeling that we have,
okay,
yes.
Well, I'm going to stick with that. A ridiculous loss because it didn't have to be that way. So we're going to shift gears. And normally we say, are you ready for some basketball? Because officially preseason kicks off for the Bulls tomorrow as the Washington Wizards roll into town. By the way, we used to say Washington Wizards and felt it was a team that wasn't formidable. We no longer can say that because there's a good amount of talent on
They
that
eliminated
team.
the Bulls in 5 games.
We can't even say
year.
that about the Charlotte Hornets anymore. The East, the complexion of the East has changed drastically in the offseason. So if you happen to be an NBA head, you should be extremely excited. So this past week, Gabe and I spent quite a bit of time with the Bulls. I was on Media Day. That clip you heard was Derek talking to the media. And a lot of people were asking the very same question, was about his physical health. After 2 seasons with both knees having injuries that he had to miss the entire season for pretty much, everyone's questioning not, do you have the ability? Do you think you can stay healthy?
As much as we have the right to ask that question, at the same time, he's got to be sick and tired of answering it.
Well, I think his answer was appropriate.
But the only way that he's going to get anybody to shut up is by proving it.
If you're a Bulls fan, I'm just curious, and I'm asking you to kind of shed your skin on this. Don't be just a Derrick Rose fan. If you're truly a Bulls fan, do you have any type of reserve in the back of your mind that Derrick Rose will stay healthy the duration of the season? 773-591-1690. If you are a social media guru, you can always get social with the show at The Sports Chica. That would be moi. Or directly with the show at The Sports Cypher. That's Cypher with a Y.
And you can follow me at Gabe Salgado82.
Get your thoughts in. See, now you're about to be absolutely inundated with sports because you're going to have football going at the same time. You're about to have basketball going. I know some people say, well, I don't really pay attention to basketball until, the football season has really kind of come to a close. But this might be a very interesting NBA season with all the shuffling that's happened with teams. And the East, which used to be a very, I'm not going to say a weak division, has really kind of dispersed a bit, and talent has been spread out. We know with LeBron obviously going to Cleveland, there no longer is what you feel is the it team in the East. It's up for grabs. And let me just say this. This might be the one season, Gabe, that you feel that if Derrick Rose is healthy, if this team remains healthy, though it's a Bulls team like you probably haven't seen in a long time, there is some scoring options that have been absent for like the last 2 to 3 seasons. Taking Derrick Rose even out the equation. They finally have a scorer, obviously, in Paul Gasol, which, by the way, can I just tell you, I think he's the nicest big fella I've ever met.
He's cool.
He is cool as a fan. I've never met somebody so polite in my entire life. When we were at the Bulls practice today, and we did an interview with him, which we'll get a chance to play a little bit later in the show, I mean, everyone wants to talk to him because obviously he's a huge addition to the team, obviously coming into the center position. So you are about to see a little bit of a shuffle, where you were seeing a lot of Noah. Now you're going to see a lot more of Paul Gasol. But what's interesting is he was pleasant. We were the last interview he did. He's like, sure. And then when it was done, he shakes Gabe's hand, and I'm a little midget behind the camera. He's like, oh, thank you. I'm like, really? He is so polite. He is so polite.
But when you get on that court with him, though, do not take his kindness for weakness.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But this is a team that has scoring possibility. So you look at the fact you bring in Paul Gasol. I'm going to say this. I've been talking about Nikola Mirotic for like a year. He's finally arrived to the NBA from Real Madrid, coming out of the European League. I really feel that he's going to make a good adjustment. And the best transition he could possibly have with this Bulls team is having Paul Gasol here, because he's going to help him make the very same transition that he made many NBA seasons ago when he came over from, Europe, Spain, to play in the U.S. So you can't beat the fact that he really has someone who can help him make the adjustment. Miricic's outside shot is phenomenal. He's about to spread the floor. If he's not intimidated, which I don't feel he will be, I think he's ready for the challenge. If he doesn't at all step back and not feel like, he can be that guy, they're going to get the numbers. And God forbid if McDermott decides that he wants to continue his college terror and be that kind of player, you finally have a lot of scorers on this team. Gabe, what would you say they don't have, though?
It's hard to pinpoint that they don't have anything. I mean, on paper, they look like they got a little something going. They got depth. They got, a little more offense. And Thibodeau, being a defensive-minded coach, is going to get them where they need to be on defense.
That would be the thing I would say.
He
now has that challenge again of getting the best defense out of every player that's on the floor.
And he could instill that in him. But now it may have to be by force with some players, but I think he can do it now.
But that's what he's known for.
So at this point, it's hard to say that the Bulls are lacking anything. But then again, they haven't played any games yet. So time will tell as the season goes on.
And obviously, it's just preseason. But one thing I liked about hearing even Coach Thibodeau, Gar Foreman all speak during Media Day, here's the one thing that they all said, and I'll be curious to what you think is the caveat to this. Nobody is going to overcommit to obviously feeling that the East is so wide open and that they can just take it. even the players won't overcommit to the fact they maybe have that feeling. I'll be curious, if you're a Bulls fan, if you're an NBA head, have you been paying attention, and do you feel this is the time that the Bulls can really seize the moment? 773-591-1690. During Media Day, a lot of players had something to say. In fact, my favorite was definitely Joakim Noah, what he had to say about the new team and where they stand in the East.
How your knee is, how you're feeling physically, and any limitations, what the starter camp will be like for you.
I'm excited. I'm excited about this opportunity. We're a very talented group. It's not about talking about it. It's about, living it every day and working hard. And I've worked really hard to get my leg as strong as possible. See, it's going to be a grueling season. Obviously, this is the first time I've ever had surgery on my knee, so I'm hoping there's no limitations, but I just have to be a little bit more cautious. And but it's exciting. It's really exciting, and I know that this is a long journey that we're about to embark in, and I just want to be as ready as possible.
Joakim, team added Paul Gasol. How are you looking forward to the two of you working together in the post area, and how much do you think that's going to help the team this season?
I think it's going to be great. I'm so excited about being able to work with Powell, somebody who has unbelievable talent and unbelievable experience too. Somebody who's won championships. I'm in my 8th year, and just to have somebody who at 30 years old I can still learn from is pretty special. And it's exciting. I feel like I can get better, and I feel like I'm going to learn a lot from Powell.
Joe, you've already been on some very talented teams already, but there's added shooting here, there's added size, veteran other players. Is this potentially the most talented roster to start the season that you've been on?
Yeah, potentially, definitely. But we all know that potential doesn't mean anything. Now we're trying to do something that's bigger than potential, and to do that, it's there's really not much to talk about.
That was Joakim Noah at Media Day, and to me, he hit on everything you need to hear. The last thing he said is it's not about potential. It's about doing it day in and day out, and everybody on this Bulls team has that attitude.
The thing I've always liked about Joakim, he always says the right things. So now it's a matter of going out there and putting those words into practice.
But did you hear him say, it's not about what you say? He pretty much started out saying it's what you do. Now, mind you, he's coming back from a knee surgery, so he himself is kind of working in. Though seeing him in practice, he looks mobile. He doesn't look he's having any setbacks from the surgery.
I'll tell you this, I can only imagine how heartbroken he was that he wasn't able to play in the World Cup, especially since his country, France, they beat Spain.
Yeah,
I mean,
probably.
Don't get me wrong. I'm sure he wants to win an NBA championship more than anything, but at the same time, representing your country is like a whole another
right. And you get a chance to play
right
against
there.
the likes of different people, like
right.
Your Paul Gasol, you get Derrick Rose. It's kind of like a division.
Now, imagine if those two were going up against each other in the post in the semifinals.
It would have been
of the
great to
World
watch.
Cup. Yes.
It would have been great to watch, knowing you have future teammates going toe to toe. So here's the thing that I'm finding. You hear players say a lot of stuff, which you may feel like could be hot air. But the thing about it, there's a sense of what I feel is humility in everybody on this team, including Derrick Rose. The thing about it is, I feel like they may know that now is the time to strike while the iron is hot, because the East belongs to anybody at this point. Let's be honest about it. And even Coach Tibbs said this. He's like, bottom line, a lot of teams did get better. Even though Miami is no longer the team that is the team to beat or the team that can take it all coming out of the East, a lot of teams got better. He's like, don't rule out necessarily the Pacers, even though within that division, there's no reason why the Bulls should not be able to walk away with that division. I mean, you're looking at the fact that Paul George, not going to see action. Lance Stevenson exit goes to the Hornets, if I'm correct. Right. So that Pacer team has a different look and feel to it.
And even though, Cleveland, they brought back LeBron, they brought in Kevin Love, they don't have as much talent on paper as the Bulls do.
Look, here's my thing, though. Let me just say this about Cleveland. Cleveland was a good team before LeBron got there. It was good, solid talent. Deion Waiters, Kyrie Irving, that was a solid team, seriously. So the addition to me of LeBron James and even Kevin Love just made them probably a little bit more lethal. Now, here becomes the question, and I think was it you and I that talked about this? The question we put on the table, and I'd ask you this, if you're an NBA person, if you like LeBron James or don't. Is he a harm or a help when he comes to a team? Do you feel that other players will defer their talent because he's on the floor? A lot of people feel that Mario Chalmers took a step back in development when LeBron James really took over the Heat. And they feel this will be the season you'll see better play from Chalmers than you've seen in the last 2 years.
You know what? I hope not, because that's what happened when Michael Jordan went to the Wizards. Everybody else just took the day off because, we got Michael.
It'll be interesting. I'm curious.
I hope that doesn't happen.
What's your thoughts? 773-591-1690. The Sports Cypher, Maya Kai, Gabe Salgado. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Back to the best sports show on the radio, the Sports Cypher.
That's right. Welcome back to the best sports talk radio show on your radio dial. That's 1690 AM WVON, the talk of Chicago. This is a Sports Cypher. I am Maya Kai, on with...
I'm Gabe Salgado, and today we had the privilege of going to the Bulls practice today.
Fantastic
That
facility.
is beautiful.
Let me just tell you something. After playing at the Bertle Center since 1993, which was a nice center if anyone's ever been there, but it's nothing like this Advocate Center that they broke ground on last year. $23 million was spent very well on this facility that's 60,000 square feet.
I've never been inside the Bertle Center, but I've heard nothing but bad things about it. I heard it's cramped. I heard it's outdated.
It was outdated. It just didn't. Obviously, this is a well-designed space. Here's the thing I like about it. Not only does it have state-of-the-art everything from training, strength and conditioning areas. The court is bigger. It's so beautiful. They made me reduce myself from being about 5'4" back to 5'1", but that's another story because they made me take my heels off today and I had to walk around with flats on. I was like, great. So now I'm back in the Ewok group. This is not cool. But either way, nice facility.
Beautiful.
Beautiful facility. I mean, just very open. But here's what I like about it. It has outside courtyards. And on the second floor, there's a green terrace. How sweet is that?
Too bad we couldn't get up there to see it.
I know, but it's a nice facility, and it's literally right across the street
Very
from
convenient.
United Center.
Makes it a lot easier, I'm sure.
And the Bulls organization said when they decided to, make the move from Deerfield to Chicago, and by the way, this is something that Mayor Rahm Emanuel really lobbied for. He really pitched them, a lot of things are happening on the west side. They're building a new Malcolm X college. This would be a great time. Yeah.
I noticed that too.
Yes.
And that means they took out the parking lot for
Yes.
Malcolm X College.
Yes. He's like,
and they used to rent out half of that lot for Bulls and Blackhawks games.
yes. And he was like, this would be a great time if you ever thought about bringing the team closer to the city to practice. Now it'd be a great time. And the Bulls organization said, okay, it's a good idea because they said a lot of their players like to live in the city of Chicago, or they live really close to the city.
Downtown.
So now this becomes, it reduces travel time and it makes it really accessible for them. So it was all the right reasons to build this fantastic facility. It's nice. I have to give them credit. I really like it.
And while we were in that facility, we had a chance to talk to some players.
We did.
I first spoke with Doug McDermott, the rookie forward.
Make buckets.
He was originally drafted by Denver with the 11th or 12th pick, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
Then the Bulls traded their first two draft picks, which are first round, were supposed to come later to get him. So obviously, Gar Forman and John Paxson saw something in him. And I actually covered a DePaul game last year when Creighton came to town, which is where McDermott went to college, and he's the real deal. So I had the chance to talk to him earlier today, and just to get a little more insight into him and what he's about. So here's my interview with Bulls rookie Doug McDermott. Gabe Salgado here for the Sports Cypher Unplugged, where we take the sports radio from the studio to the streets here at the Advocate Center, the home of the Bulls practice. I'm here with Bulls forward Doug McDermott. And Doug, appreciate you joining us. And how do you like Chicago so far? You've been here for a few months now. How do you like it so far?
It's a great city. The people are awesome. The weather's been pretty good for the most part so far. I know that's about to change, but really enjoying it.
So have you been able to take in the sights, check out some of the restaurants, just everything that goes on in the city?
Yeah, definitely the restaurant part. I've got a chance to go on the lake, go to a couple, baseball games and even a hockey game. So it's been good.
So how has your adjustment been from college to the pros? Obviously in college you're fifth all-time leading scorer in NCAA history. It's a completely new thing now in the NBA. You got to start from scratch. How has the adjustment been so far?
Oh, it's been good. It's definitely a challenge now. You're playing against the best players in the world, so obviously it's going to be tough. And, I'm just looking forward to, playing against the best every single night.
Being with Team USA Select Team over the summer and also the Summer League as well, have you really had a chance to just sit back and relax and just take it all in?
Yeah, a little bit. I had a couple weeks off after Summer League and got a chance to be with some family a little and then came straight here. But, it was great to kind of enjoy it, let it sink in a little bit. I'm just blessed to be here for the Chicago Bulls.
So tell us what the differences are between playing for your father as opposed to playing for Coach Tibbetts. Obviously, both of them they're both big time coaches. But what's the difference between playing for the two of them?
Yeah, it's a huge difference. Obviously, playing for my dad for 4 years was great. We had a great relationship. Obviously, I grew up with the guy, so we had a good relationship. He was tough on me compared to some of the other guys, and I think Coach Thibodeau the same way. He's going to push me as hard as I can go, and I think he'll be great for me.
Now, Coach Tibbs, obviously, he doesn't give a whole lot of minutes to rookies, but they've been saying that you'd probably be one of the exceptions. How many minutes do you think you'll see this season?
I'm not really sure. It's one of those deals where I have to earn my minutes. I'm not just going to be able to step on the floor just because maybe they drafted me in the first round. It still has to be earned, and that's something that hopefully it'll come along. With trust of the coaching staff and trust of the guys that are playing a lot of minutes.
Now, in college, they say you made it look easy. Now, what do you think of the expectations as far as you've been able to score a ton of points and hit all those jump shots? How has that been for you so far?
Yeah, it's not going to be as easy anymore. Obviously I'm playing against the greatest athletes and a lot more length, and I think it'll be a lot harder because just everything's different about the NBA. The spacing, it's going to be an adjustment, and I'm not expecting to be the same guy I was in college, right off the bat in the NBA, just because that's just not accurate.
Based on what you've seen so far, how do you think this team's coming together so far?
Oh, really well. I think it's a great, close-knit group. Even with some new guys, everyone seems to really get along, and it's awesome to see that. And I think on the floor, it's showing.
And just like that, I teleport back into the studio.
After being unplugged.
But in all seriousness, when he says that his father was tough on him in college, that is no joke. I know there's a stereotype that if you play for your father or for a relative, they take it easy. I know his father was just as hard on him as he was the other guys on his college team. But here's the thing, Bulls fans, we all know what McDermott can do. He's the NCAA's 5th all-time leading scorer. He's up there with some pretty good company.
Yes, he is.
And but don't go nuts if he doesn't enter a game and scores 25 points and it's off of 6 or 7 shooting right off the bat. It's going to take some time.
Okay, but anybody, let's be honest, anybody who is watching basketball, 1, to see that from a rookie would be exceptional. 2, he even said himself, the level of play, the competition has now has risen exponentially. So he knows that his game has to change and he has to make those adjustments.
And I kind of had a feeling the Bulls were definitely looking into him when I went to that DePaul game that night. And Gar Forman was sitting 3 seats across from me on press row. So the Bulls definitely had some interest. So, hopefully it'll turn out to be a good investment for them.
Well, the rumor swirls that, you've got these 2 dynamic rookies, obviously, in Doug McDermott and Nikola Mirotic, and that don't expect to see a lot of them in the rotation. Now, I don't know if that's just what you hear because there is that reputation from Coach Thibodeau that he doesn't really play rookies. But I think these are 2 quite dynamic players coming into the league, and I think it would be expected that they're going to see decent minutes because they really bring scoring dynamics to this team that have been missing for a while. Now, obviously, that's about can they transition over. To me, when I look at when I look at Mirotic, when I look at McDermott, if either one of them, if I had to pick one that's probably really NBA ready, it probably is Mirotic because of the level of play that he's had throughout Europe and playing with Real Madrid.
He's had the experience.
He's had the experience. Even though it might be the European League, I still feel that has prepared him for that transition to the NBA.
The concerns that I have with both players, McDermott, can he latch on to the defensive system that Thibodeau's going to instill in him? 2, with Nikola Mirotic, my concern with him is, obviously, don't get me wrong, Europe is probably the best competition you'll have outside of the NBA.
Right.
But, can he adjust to, the style? I mean, the court's slightly smaller.
Right.
And, the 3-point line's a little bit longer than it is in Europe, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
So
small adjustments.
Right, exactly. So can he, with basketball being a game of inches, how can he adjust to that?
But here's the thing you got to like. The Bulls have pretty much had what I would like to say is a monopoly on Mirotic for a while. It was a matter, the question is, when is he coming stateside to play?
Right, he was drafted 3 years ago.
Right, so I think they really gave him the development time, which I think was a nice time for him to mature overseas. And it was but I think it also got to, it's now or I'm looking at other options because I feel like it's time for me to come to the NBA.
Not only that, it was mostly his decision he wanted to get that development because when he was drafted, he was only, 18, 19 years old, something like that.
Right.
So I mean, just to give you an idea of how how the laws are completely different on the other side of the world. You could play pro basketball at 15, 16 in Europe. I mean, that's what Tony Parker did. That's what Paul Gasol did.
Right.
Paul's brother Mark did the same
Yes.
thing. So they start them young in that part of the world.
And the thing you have to appreciate about, especially players who come from the European League, is the amount of discipline they come with. Their concept of basketball is not quite NBA concept. Their skill level is usually very solid, and they don't seem, from what I've seen from the likes of Paul Gasol, Mark, Tony Parker, Tony Kukoc, who by the way does work with the Bulls organization behind the scenes.
He does.
They never seem to be too absorbed. Like they don't feel they're bigger than the game. Yet their talent to me is always it's always had an impact. All those players I just named, every team they've been on, they've had positive impact, especially with scoring. It seems like they found balance, and they just don't get sucked into the NBA machine.
I mean, you talk about making an impact. I mean, obviously, Tony Parker comes into the league as a rookie, wins an NBA championship.
Exactly.
And he's won quite a few of them since then.
Think about it. If I asked you the question, who are the best 2-point guards in the NBA, you would say what?
Tony Parker.
And Chris Paul.
There you go.
The two best pure point guards in the league.
Now, here's the interesting thing about Paul Gasol coming to the Bulls. Remember when the Grizzlies were shopping him?
Yes, of course.
It was a situation where he was the best player on the worst team and wasn't getting any better.
This is true.
The Bulls tried to get him back then. It didn't work out. He goes to the Lakers, and all of a sudden, they're in the NBA Finals. He really filled the void that they needed.
And like we said, today we had a chance to chat with Paul Gasol, and I just have to say, he just is the nicest guy I've ever done an interview with. Meet Paul Gasol.
Gabe Salgado here for the Sports Cypher Unplugged, back at the Advocate Center, the practice facility for the Chicago Bulls, and I'm here with Bulls center Paul Gasol. And Paul, first of all, I'd like to welcome you to Chicago. How do you like it so far?
I love it so far. It's been great.
You've had quite a busy summer playing in the World Cup. Obviously, you guys didn't get as far as you would like to, but a lot of people say that you kind of turned some heads with your performance, averaged close to 30 points per game, kind of made a statement there after struggling with injuries the last couple seasons. How do you evaluate your performance in the World Cup this year?
I was happy with it. I think I was able to play at a high level. I felt really good playing, and it's a good sign for me and something to build on for the season.
What ultimately led you to come to Chicago as opposed to going to Oklahoma, San Antonio, or maybe staying in LA? What ultimately pushed you to Chicago?
Well, I felt this team had every weapon and everything in place for me to just come in and add to it and hopefully take it to the next level. So that's a great team, great potential, great city, great franchise. So I felt it was going to be the best fit.
You're going to get to play with Joakim Noah. You're going to get to play with Taj Gibson, those guys up front. What are you expecting from pairing up with those guys?
I expect it to be a lot of fun. A lot of fun to practice with them and against them, compete, and then go against other front courts in the league and measure up with them. See how we do.
Health-wise, how are you feeling?
Feel good. Feel good right now. It's been a demanding first week of training camp. A lot of work, but so far I've been able to sustain it well.
What are you expecting of yourself this year?
Just try to find good rhythm. Try to stay healthy, work on my body, and just keep doing what I do. Keep playing the sport that I love to play, and hopefully making a difference on the floor.
Paul Gasol is not your typical professional athlete.
No, he's not.
I mean, it's interesting to pick the guy's brain. I mean, very intelligent, very articulate in the way he speaks.
Those Spaniards.
I mean, the guy listens to classical music in his spare time.
I have no problem with that because I happen to like classical music, so I think that's fantastic.
Well, like I said, say what you want about the guy's personal life, but he's going to throw the hammer down on that court.
Here's the thing. You bring the likes of Paul Gasol, which, what's funny is I know everyone's. I wonder how many times people have called him Paul. It's Paul. Come on, you got to drop that L and drag that U.
And here's the best part about it. He just goes with it.
I think he knows people struggle with it. Like they want to say Paul, but it's like you got to drop that L and drag that U. That's how it is.
When he first came to the league, I was calling him Paul too.
Well, it's one letter short. That's it. It's one letter short. But the thing about it is, and it's interesting because a lot of people had him on their radar. The Knicks, which I'll be honest, I thought he was going to really end up in New York because obviously Phil Jackson is there. He has a relationship with him. He would have been a good fit. Just what Carmelo Anthony could really use is that center, kind of tandem. He could use that.
I didn't think he was going to go there. I honestly thought that
see, was looking at him.
No, I thought he was going to go to San Antonio and pair up with Tim Duncan. That was my
San
first
Antonio
guess.
was, but it's interesting that when it was all said and done, he picked the Bulls, and without saying it, and all of his kind of just comments, he didn't say it, but I always felt like he was alluding to if there was a team that was really set to win a championship, I think in the back of his mind he felt it was the Bulls.
When you look at it, he talks about this team has every weapon.
Yes.
The Spurs have similar weapons,
yes.
but I think what it boiled down to is the Bulls have younger weapons.
Yes.
San Antonio, a lot of those guys are up there in age, and I think that, Paul Gasol already being knocked because he's had injuries the last couple of years. He's 34 years old. A lot of people thought he was at the end of his rope. So I think by him going to a team with younger talent could probably maybe give him that energy boost, and, he could prove that he's not the old guy on the block, that he could still go.
He is. The Bulls have a very interesting dynamic on the floor. Obviously, you've got Noah, you've got Gasol, then those center roles. Then obviously, Gasol can roll over to be a power forward along with Tosh Gibson. So at any point of time, you might have the likes of, Noah and Gasol on the floor at the same time. Here's what's interesting is you're going to have in that small forward capacity, you may have Mike Dunleavy and you've got McDermott behind him. What's interesting is I think bringing in the likes of Gasol takes a little bit of pressure off of Mike Dunleavy. And I think the scoring you kind of felt you were going to get from him last year a lot more consistently opposed to as spotty as it was. For some reason, I feel you're going to see more consistency in his game because to me, the scoring just got spread out. Obviously you've got Derek back. He's healthy and and everything I've seen him do, he looks healthy. He looked healthy, playing in the World Cup. So
and
it's interesting. What does this team look like on paper? What other team does it look like?
San Antonio.
Exactly.
But here's my thing about Rose. I know everybody's making a big deal. He had a couple of scoreless games in the World Cup, but the point is that he went out there. He was still able to jump. He was still able to run. No pain, no soreness, no nothing. He was just rusty. That's all it boiled down to. And obviously didn't hurt Team USA any. They won the gold medal.
And he even said, obviously my scoring wasn't up to par because I can't take the amount of shots. I don't have the same rhythm I'll have with my team here in Chicago.
And plus, when you're playing with a bunch of all-stars on your roster, you got to spread the ball around.
You got to spread the ball around.
Now, here's what I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see Derrick Rose dish out a few more assists than he normally has with Gasol and Noah both underneath the rim there. They're probably going to have to fight each other for the ball to get the dunk in there, but it's going to be exciting to see.
That's one of the things that Derrick alluded to, that he finally feels, he said not to make a knock at anybody else, but I really feel like there are other scoring options that will be consistent on the floor. That's going to allow me to spread it out, which makes me more dynamic when I drive to the basket because there are other scorers on the floor.
They're not just going to worry about him. They got to worry about him passing that ball.
Even he said that. So I think that's really key. This is Sports Cypher. I am Maya Kai.
Gabe Salgado.
Let's take a quick break. We'll come back, keep talking Bulls, and then jump into some hot topics and headlines. Stay tuned.
Cypher. The Sports Cypher.
Welcome back to the Sports Cypher. I am Maya Kai on with Gabe Salgado, and we're in that home stretch. We are talking Bulls, which is always, I guess, a welcome thing.
Well, today it is.
It is, especially after a very sad Bears loss. But tomorrow kicks off preseason, and John Wall and the Washington Wizards will roll into the United Center. And all of these dynamics that we've been talking about, we'll get to see them come into play. A lot of things can look good on paper. And even though we've seen them working out in practice, you don't know how they're going to really gel until you get into game time situations. And then that's when you can see potential issues or flaws. And speaking of flaws, we have Nick calling from the East about the Bulls' flaws. So, Nick, what would those flaws be?
The flaws I'm looking at, one of the things we pointed out was that Thibodeau obviously is a Coach of the Year type of guy, but the issue with him is that him and his minute management and dogging his guys. Like, I think he'll be decent with managing the minutes, but in that fourth quarter or those games where they're 10, 20 points behind, how's he going to manage health? That's one of the strong things. Everybody says like the Bulls are the Spurs of the East now, but like, are you going to manage minutes like Pop did? Are you, and I think, we got Gasol, who's old, Noah, bad knee, Rose, so on and so forth. Are they going to be able to protect our big three?
I guess we'll see. What's interesting in this Bulls roster, Nick, is that there is good depth, even when you look at scoring. Like when you talk about the fact that you can rotate, obviously Noah and Gasol at the center position, or you can slide out Gasol to the power forward side. So you're getting a little bit of flexibility.
Right. I understand where he's coming from.
I do. That's been an issue with
but the difference between the Bulls and the Spurs is the Spurs, they don't have that kind of flexibility to move around guys. Maybe a little bit with Duncan, but other than that, not so much.
Well, I think
the Bulls, you'll have that.
With the Spurs, to me, what happened coming into this season is that playoff experience from last year really helped to develop the likes of like Danny Green and Thiago Splitter,
Kawhi
Leonard. That playoff experience that's missing being the NBA, finals champion, to me, prepared them for this season. So that was just like extremely important for them. And here's the thing. If you go back and look at minutes, those players got considerable minutes from Pop. But they also could get those minutes because they were young players. And for him, he was really developing them out. You didn't get those kind of minutes from Tim Duncan. Actually, in the playoffs, even in the finals, you didn't get big minutes from Tim Duncan. But you got key minutes from Tim Duncan.
He made those minutes count.
So I would like to say maybe that Coach Thibodeau will maybe change his philosophy a bit, because he does have a mixture of not necessarily an old team, because really outside of Pau Gasol, who was probably the older player on the team, and even Kirk Heinrich, everybody else is relatively young. Can I say fresh legs? Maybe. Derek is obviously the one point of concern, but that's why playing with Team USA was really crucial to help him get a little bit of the rust off. That was really key for him. Obviously, Noah having his, first set of knee surgery, he never had anything like that. But overall, he's saying he feels good. He moves well. I mean, we know that these kind of injuries are going to happen throughout the NBA.
Let's keep in mind that Noah's injury was more of an orthoscopic thing than it was anything
like
major.
Cleaning the knee out
right.
more than anything else. It wasn't like a major knee reconstruction type deal.
Because, Noah's been pretty much, hardcore since college.
And understand this. What you don't want him to have any more issues with is his feet. No more plantar fasciitis. That's an injury that can be nagging and really hard to work through and clearly affects play.
Definitely.
So better having the knee cleaned out than dealing with plantar fasciitis throughout the stretch of the season when it's all said and done. So overall, when you look at their roster, there really is a good amount of balance of how Coach Thibodeau can kind of spread these minutes out. You might get a bit more of Taj Gibson. I guess the one point of concern I have is I personally didn't feel that Tony Snell really kind of got the minutes he should have gotten last season to get him ready for this season. And I'm just wondering if there might be a developed step back for him.
And I'm interested to see what happens with their second-round draft pick, Cameron Barstow.
Yeah.
I mean, he's another big guy that adds depth, but at the same time with Mirotic, with Gasol, with Noah, with Gibson, I think it's going to be a really hard time to find a place for him.
You look at the Bulls division, where obviously you got the Milwaukee Bucks, the Pacers, the Pistons, teams that are getting better. Cleveland got better, obviously, in Chicago. So, you do have a division that might get a little sticky as you get down the stretch. But by all means, I expect that this is a playoff team. I don't see any reason why they should not be making the playoffs. And here's one thing I guess that Bulls fans probably learned when it was all said and done in the 2 years of Derek's absence. It's not really about your record. If nothing else, the Heat should have taught you that. It's about getting in the playoffs and then taking care of business. So you don't have to have the best record in the East or in your division. It's about staying healthy throughout the duration and getting into the playoffs and getting things done. And I'm hoping there's a philosophy change. Even though I don't think they set out to have best records. I don't think that was it. But if it's about minutes, there's definitely enough talent here that I think that Coach Thibodeau can spread the minutes out. And I'm hoping maybe he will give McDermott, he will give Mirotic those minutes to help them develop because they can contribute.
He definitely needs to give him those minutes if he's worried about guys getting tired or, wear and tear, especially with Gasol and Noah and Rose. So it'll definitely be interesting. But, again, don't get upset if McDermott doesn't drop 40 points in a 10-minute
Well,
span.
Derek doesn't drop those kind of numbers, so hence we're not going to expect that of Doug McDermott. And if you do, there's something wrong with you.
But at the same time, it's funny because as someone who's covered college basketball in addition to the NBA, it's amazing how college can make legends out of guys who don't deserve to be legends. I mean, a lot of people compare Doug McDermott to Jimmer Fredette. Remember, Jimmer Fredette played with the Bulls last year.
Did he make an appearance here? Jimmer Fredette?
He's not even with the team. And it's funny because he, coming out of college, was a big time scorer and just couldn't really find his whatever.
Rhythm.
Yeah, he just couldn't really translate that to NBA success. So that's one thing.
And it does happen.
And that's one thing you're going to have to take into consideration with McDermott. So hopefully you want him to get the minutes, but at the same time you want him to be eased into the situation. With Jimmer Fredette, when he was drafted, he was basically being told, okay, we're rebuilding this team. It's your job to lead us in the right direction. And that kind of didn't work out to him.
And let me just say this. If our biggest concern going into this new NBA season is about how Coach Thibodeau is going to manage the minutes, then let me just say this. That's a good problem to have. Because you know what we're not talking about is who's going to score. So this is a good problem.
Everybody.
Right. That's a good problem to have about just being concerned that, he might ride the wheels off the bus, but not so much that there's no wheels on the bus to ride off. And I think that's the part that's really key, is that there's finally scoring ability. And maybe we won't be talking about, there's not that two guard, there's not that pure scorer, because the thing is, it's really diversified across the team. And you're not going to have over expectations for Jimmy Butler or for Taj Gibson, because the thing is, you can spread it out. And even Derek said during media day, I don't feel like I have this weight on my shoulders while I have to be everything all the time. And one thing I think we should all know is that when it comes to minutes, I don't think that Coach Thibodeau is going to overplay him, even though Derek alludes to he feels very confident about where he is physically. He says he doesn't question his movement. He feels comfortable cutting to the basket. He's not thinking about his knees. And one of the questions I asked him during media day was, obviously after 2 years of injury and becoming a father, and obviously being very in tune with the violence in Chicago, because he donated $1 million to After School Matters.
He also paid for funeral for that one victim.
Yes.
That little girl.
He did. He's very in tune, and he's never let that go. One thing I can tell you that I think is different about Derek is his mental resolve is much more solid than I've ever seen it before. So for him, even though these were major setbacks, I think for him, there were huge mental development moments and giving him more mental toughness. And I think for him, that's going to change his game. So hence, when he said, I'm going to wipe off the fact that people are questioning my ability. So, media day was great. Preseason kicks off tomorrow against the Wizards. And hence, we get to go into a sports frenzy in the city of Chicago, because there'll be a lot of things to watch. Blackhawks are playing. I've been to that preseason game. I'm just overall excited overall. It's good stuff. I'm glad that sports are back and I don't have to go through a drought over the summer like I did. Oh, that was just god-awful. But
you got to find ways to survive like I do.
God, it was just absolutely awful.
Even if the baseball is bad, you can find something to talk about with that. Come on now.
Obviously we did. But it was still painful, Gabe. But with that being said, did you get a chance to check out on CBS Sports, the cable network? They actually are the first station to have an all-female talk show called, ironically enough, We Need to Talk. It debuted on Tuesday. Did you get a chance to see it?
I have not got a chance to see it. I probably should check it out. I've heard good things about it.
Show. And I'm not just saying it because it's a panel of women. That's not why I'm saying it. CBS did something to me that everybody else should have thought of a long time ago. Well, I've been talking about this for years, that women have the ability to have candid conversations, X and O's, key topics. They have that ability. Well, CBS did it right, because what they did is they went to the creme de la creme of women in journalism. So it has Andrea Kramer's on it, Tracy Wolfson, Dana Jacobson, Allie LaForce, and then they went to athletes. So they have Layla Ali, Lisa Leslie, Swin Cash, Katrina Adams, and Dara Torres was on there too. So it's a panel of 11 to 12 women. The journalists, I think, are always going to be there. I don't know if the athletes will probably they may rotate in and out, but it was such great candid conversation, and the format's fantastic because it seems really personal. They have like a round table where there's like 4 women talking about a topic, and then they may pan over on a couch and there's maybe 3 or 4 women there talking, or it might be stand up at a monitor, but the flow of the show is natural. And I have to say, they nailed most things. They talked about, obviously, the NFL, domestic violence, Roger Goodell. I think they nailed it. Everything they said was good. The only thing that I felt they got a little soft on, I'm like, ladies, this is when you don't get soft. This is when you prove with the boys that we can hang with you. When it came to talking about domestic violence, and the conversation came up about Hope Solo, who has domestic violence charges against her for
which nobody's talking about.
Right, she assaulted her brother and her sister and her 17-year-old nephew. Charges have been filed. It's currently in
she's pending trial.
Pending trial is in November.
She was drunk when she was arrested,
and she is still playing with the U.S. Olympic team, or the U.S. Women's team in soccer. Everybody seems to think this is okay, but yet for some reason, all these women on this panel were like, well, if a man is charged, he should have to sit and lose pay. They felt that it was unfair that Adrian Peterson was getting a paycheck while he's currently under investigation. But yet everybody thought it was okay for Hope Solo to play. I have an issue with that.
I'm not trying to be sexist here, but I think they're giving her, a lot of people are giving her a pass because she's a woman.
No pass. Because here's what I feel you're telling me. I feel like you're trying to put a face on domestic violence that says domestic violence is only relevant when it's a man assaulting a woman.
Exactly.
That's what I feel like the message that you're sending. When you say it's okay for Hope Solo to assault her sister and her nephew, who's a minor, by the way. Intoxicated or not. Plenty of people didn't Ray Rice have alcohol involved? And when he unfortunately very much assaulted his wife? To me, you're putting a face on domestic violence that I feel is inappropriate. And I felt as women, this was a chance to say, violence is not appropriate no matter who the perpetrator is and who the victim is.
Did they say anything about it? They just ignored it completely?
They lost it and then went away from it. They
Wow.
brought it up like she's still playing, and that's it, and they ran. I'm like, whoa, hold up. Wait a minute, ladies. They were very candid. I mean, Swin Cash, as well as Lisa Leslie, talked about being victims of domestic violence. By the way, they disagreed about how to handle it. Lisa Leslie's like, I walked away. I realized this wasn't for me. Swin Cash is like, oh, it's not that easy. So everybody didn't agree. So you had a little bit of controversy there. Dara Tar has talked about how she had been a victim of domestic violence and how it really has stuck with her for a number of years after the fact.
I will say this. I didn't watch it. You did, but based on what you say, I look at it this way. If we're going to talk about equality in this country, it's got to go both ways. Now, I don't advocate domestic violence whatsoever. I mean, I'm against it. It's just a terrible thing. But just like you said, putting a face on domestic violence, that's yeah.
And that's cool. What I feel like everybody's attempting to do with this, because it seems like if you're a perpetrator of violence, if it's two guys fighting or two, how about we just squash violence in this society, period? Because the problem is we've allowed for violence in this country to fester and to grow. And the problem is you see these reality shows and you've got women fighting each other, punching each other. And I'm like, why does everybody think this is okay? And the one thing I tell people, because I'm very knowledgeable about domestic violence because I've had to deal with victims as well as people that were perpetrators. There is not a single model for what domestic violence really looks like. Because a lot of people really think that women can't be perpetrators, and that's not true.
Domestic violence knows no sex, race, color, or creed.
Exactly. But yet, it seems like we're trying to formulate something like that. So I was a little disappointed that they didn't take the whole Hope Solo thing to task, that they gave her a pass. And I honestly feel like a lot of people are. And as far as I'm concerned, I feel like the U.S. women's soccer team needs to be held accountable for allowing like someone like this to still be playing on the team. Because for girls, how is that possibly a good role model?
Oy.
Exactly. Oh, wait. So I was a little disappointed that they didn't dig deep into that. Because I'm like, if you're going to go ahead and dig deep, ladies, dig deep. And I felt like they glossed over that. But it seems like everybody in the country, because by the way, Hope Solo has not lost a single endorsement, FYI. Pending charges.
Adrian Peterson. No, I don't know about not Adrian Peterson. Ray Rice lost his for sure.
Yeah.
You know what? I think Adrian Peterson did lose his dad.
Yes, he lost some endorsements. But yet, Hope Solo has not lost an endorsement. What does that tell you about our country? Backwards.
Mm-hmm.
So that was something that happened this week that people were talking about. It was a really well done show. And the title is, It Can't Get Better. We Need to Talk. Whenever a woman says that means, fellas, you're supposed to be listening, right? Good title. And matter of fact, even behind the camera, they really have it's women producing the show as well. You've got Emmy Award-winning Emily Deutsch is part of the producing, Susan Smith, Amy Salmonson. So you have a lot of women that really have been invested in sports talk, putting this together, not just in front of the camera, but behind the camera too. Something else that came out when you talk about biased, and this will be our last hot topic. So Tim Duncan is going through a divorce, which you would never know because it's been going on well before the finals.
Run that by me again.
Tim Duncan is going through a divorce,
and
you would never know.
You never hear anything about his personal life.
I heard about it when it started well before the final started, like in the spring of last year. And so his wife comes out.
Anybody knows why?
No, but his wife went on record in court and said that he is a raging bisexual. Now, here's my issue with that. Amy, who happens to be Tim's estranged wife, you have children that are old enough to know what you're talking about. Don't air your dirty laundry. Like, even if that's true, why would you say something like that to the father of your children?
Other than for publicity, I don't know.
But it's inappropriate. Even if you're, I don't know if she's saying it was mentally just too much for her to deal with, but here's the thing. Tim Duncan has not said peep about this yet. And I tell you what, I don't think he will. Because Tim is real private, and I guess he'll be like, in the court of public opinion, if that's what you want to believe, then so be it. I don't anticipate he's going to say anything.
I don't either.
Because he's just that kind of guy.
He's just when he does things with the media, it's all about basketball and nothing else.
And I just think I'm disappointed that his estranged wife stooped that low. Well, This is a wrap for us. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you join us next Sunday, 9 to 11 p.m.
Before we go, we want to thank Gianna's.
Yes, for giving us awesome food. You can always check them out at 1519 East 87th Street. Go to giannaspizza.com and tell them the Sports Cypher send you 773-734-9400 if you want to place an order. Thank you to Daryl Ledbetter, who is the beat writer for the Atlanta Falcons for the AJC, for giving us a breakdown of Week 6.
And thank you for all the callers. We appreciate your enthusiasm.
That's right. So make sure you check us out next Sunday. You can catch this rebroadcast Wednesday, 8 p.m. Go to blogtalkradio.com/Maya Kai Presents, and you can check this show out. Gabe, thank
Maya,
you for sitting in.
Well, thank you.
Malcolm on the ones and twos, the tech producer. Thank you so much. And I have a new intern who, by the way, his name is Malcolm. I couldn't hear you through the glass. My new intern. Thank you for filling in. Anyways, we will see you all next week.